Good morning and welcome back to another Saturday Morning Coffee episode on Alcove. Today, I am actually a little down south in, I guess, is Weiser considered middle Idaho?
Southwest.
Southwest Idaho? Okay, so I'm in Southwest Idaho. We're doing engagement pictures, but I'm over here having Saturday Morning Coffee with Grandma and Grandpa, my fiance's grandparents. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves real quick?
Yes, I am Lyle.
And I'm Jerry Kleppen.
I guess I'm Kleppen too.
Yeah. All right. So we all got our hot cup of coffee. What is the coffee brand we're drinking this morning?
It is Harry and David breakfast blend.
Harry and David breakfast blend. Perfect. Well, I had a couple of things I wanted to bring up today with you two. First of all, I don't think I've ever sat in your guys' backyard before, but it is beautiful, and you guys have an amazing view, and you guys have a very well taken care of yard. I love it back here.
Had to be Jerry's project.
Oh, no. I don't do anything outside. It's Lyle's doing. Lyle spends all of his time outside.
Now, are you the one who manages the whole garden then?
Yes. Jerry does not have the green thumb outside.
Nor inside.
What do you typically grow? What's your year-to-year growing?
Oh, golly. Yellow beans, green beans, peas, carrots, beets, zucchini, yellow summer squash, lemon cucumbers, butternut squash, bromas, early girls, tomatoes, green peppers, yellow peppers, hot peppers, cantaloupe, rhubarb,
So about everything under the sun.
Raspberries.
gourds,
Yeah.
red potatoes, green potato, Yukon golds. Oh, there's something else in there. Oh,
It's a grapevine.
there's eggplant in there.
We got some squash from you actually when Faith and I first started getting together, and we made some homemade squash soup and some other things. We also diced it up and baked it and everything. It was very good. I wouldn't say better than anything I can get in a grocery.
And butternut squash, you can't beat it.
Yeah, you really can't. So, funny thing, I love butternut squash soup so much, but when I was living in Texas for a couple of years, couldn't find it anywhere. Not a single grocery store had butternut squash. And I brought it up to my friends and eventual roommates down there, and they looked at me like I was insane when I said I was craving butternut squash soup. They had never heard of it, and they thought it was the most insane thing anyone would ever want. It's way better than tomato soup.
You have to put some curry with it. Curry, butternut.
Okay.
Butternuts. Oh, curry is great in butternut.
Last year he had over 50 butternut
Damn.
squash.
But curry butternut was hot, warm bread, dip. Oh,
Man, that does sound really good.
that's a wintertime thing, though. Not in the summer.
Yeah. Man. Well, shoot. Well, I might have to ask if I can get a little bit of butternut squash again this year.
Yeah, it's there. It'll be there.
Okay. All right. Well, Jerry, I've been wanting to ask, how did you get into mahjong?
Oh, it was back in 2017. When I retired in 2000. I'm sorry. Let me start again with the dates. 2006 is when I retired, and 3 other friends and I got together just for coffee and to talk every Thursday. Well, then this new lady moved into town, and she was a mahjong player, and she joined our group, and she taught us mahjong. And it is
And just stuck
still
ever since?
learning, yeah. So every Thursday since '07, we have met for lunch, and then we hang around the restaurant and play mahjong.
Oh, nice. You guys played at a local restaurant?
Yes,
Okay.
They take up space.
we do. There were a few restaurants when we started who didn't want us there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because it took up space.
But there's nobody
So-
there.
There was nobody there, but they didn't like us hanging out.
Mm.
So we've had to switch a few times. So, sometimes at one point we were at a church hall that a friend had a key to, and we'd bring our sack lunches and stuff. But Yeah.
I love it.
It's fun. It's fun. It's challenging. I mean, you can go weeks without winning, but close counts.
How long do you guys normally play?
We get together at 11:30, have lunch, talk until about 1, and then we play until about 3, a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
We used to play till 4, but we're getting older.
Yeah.
Forgetful.
Yeah, we've gone through a few players.
Okay.
We used to have...
Burn them out.
we burn them out.
You guys
Two
are the
passed
hardcore
away on us.
Oh.
We really did them. No, we've had great friends over the years.
Mhm.
And just this last week, we had a new lady come see if she would like to
Mm.
join us. So we'll see. Yeah.
You think she'll stick around?
I don't know. We'll see. I hope so. Yeah, it'll be fun to have somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of you normally come out for it?
There's 6 of us that play.
Okay.
And 2 of the ladies have sets of tiles for it. And you can play with 3 people at a table, or you can play with 4 people at a table. So if there's 6 of us that show up, then we need the 2 sets, and we set up. And the one little restaurant here in town, Tara's, she has just accommodated us, and she even puts reserve sign on our table.
Well, that's cute. That's
Yeah,
nice.
it's fun. Yeah.
And Lyle, how long have you been brewing your own beer?
Brewing beer. Well, let's see. Has to go back into the 70s, and I took a break in the 80s. I think that's when we moved to Idaho, and then I picked it up again, and so I brew 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 batches a year.
How big
That's
are your
it.
batches?
Well, let's see. It's a 5-gallon bucket, so it's 5 gallons.
It's called White Bucket Brewing.
Yes, I have my own label, Michael. I put it on my bottle. It says White Bucket Brewing. And it's a picture of a white bucket tipped over and the inside's running out.
Very cute. So, man, if you've been doing this since the 70s, do you just have this big old notebook of recipes and methods that you've tried over the years? Or do you keep a record?
I keep a record of when I brew and what I brew, but I don't really have a recipe, Michael. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I brought it up because my grandpa, when he was alive, he was also into brewing for many decades. And when he passed away, his notebook disappeared. But he just had all sorts of different recipes of his favorite brews over the years and stuff. And so I always wish I could have seen it as an adult, because I would have loved to have gotten into brewing too.
That would have been so cool.
Mm-hmm. It would have been
That's
very
too
nice
bad
little
it disappeared.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be fancy. It would be my great-grandparents in South Dakota. They brewed beer in the basement, not in the basement, it'd be in the root cellar. It was in a crock pot with just a lid on top, so it's not carbonated.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beer. Have it for summer and wheat harvest in the fall. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be fancy.
My grandpa didn't brew, but he ran the moonshine.
Oh, you made mash and
outside
stuff.
the law.
I just found that out at our reunion back 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Didn't know that before about him.
that's funny.
But brewing is easy. Anybody can brew. Doesn't take much talent. Just takes a little time.
Yeah.
Not hard.
One of his last brews was from fresh hops.
Mhm.
A couple former students in town have fresh hops in their backyard.
Oh.
I went and got hops from a couple of kids I had in class they're not kids anymore. They're 50 years old. But they had hops on the fence. He said, well, I had intention of brewing as well. I do brew. So I made some fresh, it was a stout with fresh hops and kind of a cascade. So it was good. I don't brew heavy stuff. Most of my beer is 4.5 to 5.5%. That's about it. I want to be able to taste it and enjoy it.
Sure. So, you guys moved out here in the 80s, right?
1978.
1978, okay. And you were both teachers since then, right?
Before and since.
Okay. And how long have you guys been retired?
Oh, since 06. So a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And you've been in Weiser since '79, right? How have you guys seen the town change in those years?
Ooh,
I'm
interesting,
sure recent
interesting question. The town itself, philosophies have changed, I think, and it was more of a mom and pop, grandparents. You knew Johnny in class, and you knew Johnny's dad, his grandparents, and his uncles, and I mean, it was more of it was a huge family kind of thing, but it was still 5,000 people, but it says it's we're close to 6,000 now, but with the outlying areas, it's probably closer to 10 or 12. So, but that's changed. There's a lot of people who moved in. Not that it's bad, but the philosophy changes. They don't have the ties here and that kind of thing.
But in some ways, there's a lot of good stuff that's happened in Weiser.
Oh, there's good stuff too.
Really,
I'm not saying it's bad.
There's the community's always been very supportive of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Very supportive.
Comes together.
It really does. They've remember when they tried to get a swimming pool after the one was condemned, and there was just for a few years there was a fall harvest, and money went for the swimming pool fund, and the people just rallied around that. And of course, with the fiddle contest here every year, things get cleaned up in town. The streets get restriped, and the crosswalks get redone, and people fix up their yards and their flowers and stuff, and everybody kind of pitches in to have things look great for that.
Love that.
Yeah.
But if there's a need, if there's a need in town for something, whatever it happens to be, you don't have. It's not like an organization takes care of it. But if there's somebody sees a need, it just gets done. It just gets filled. And a lot of those are former students that have grown up here and they've stayed here and that kind of thing. A lot of newcomers coming in. They're learning how to do that.
Isn't there a subdivision being built right now?
Yes, there is. Two of them right across the road from each other on the west side of town.
Mm-hmm.
We just drove through. There's 7 houses that are occupied, and
25 that are built and just about completed since January 1st of 24.
and it's all curb gutter paved roads and
Pretty fancy
Yeah.
for Weiser.
well, the infrastructure's there, and I think that's something that is good to see, that there's some planning going into it,
Sure.
because small town. Over the years since we've been here, there's a lot of stuff that the infrastructure, like there's not it hasn't been a sidewalk up to the high school, which is kind of at the north end of town, until they just finished it this summer. So
It's a good half a mile, 3/4 miles walk from downtown, so
yeah.
there's no sidewalk.
So those kinds of things, but that takes money and somebody with some thought, and some of that's being done
Sure.
to upgrade, make things better.
Your description of Weiser reminds me of like my perception of Weiser when I was a kid. So have you guys been to Weiser before?
Weiser. Have I been to Weiser? Yes, I've been to Weiser.
Okay.
In fact, I know a gal from Weiser.
Well,
No, that's Kalamazoo. Isn't that the song? I don't know. Go ahead.
well, Weiser's 300, 400 person town. When I was a kid, I just perceived it as this like close community who came together all the time for those kinds of things. Or like one of my earliest memories, and it could be one of those false memories that's actually a dream that you just think is a real memory. But I remember like a community cleanup. I think maybe like before rodeo season. And that's the perception I had, but it's kind of funny that after I grew up, I kind of realized that Weiser has quite a lot of problems and are not quite that vision I had. But Weiser doesn't seem to quite have some of those issues, but it's a really nice little town. I really like it out here. It's quiet and a little spread out, and everyone seems to be mostly pretty darn happy out here. Yeah.
It's a good small town.
Yeah.
We were going to probably move after our youngest daughter graduated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that happened 17 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still
17 years
here.
ago. Try 20-some years ago.
27 years ago, yes.
24, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, we're still here, because where else would you go?
Yeah, sure. Well, I brought this little fact sheet of beaver stuff that I...
Oregon State stuff, huh?
well, no. I gotta be brave and bold through and through, but...
Okay.
As I told you guys, I've been recently listening to a couple of podcasts, and then I started reading some research articles about beavers, and just instantly became very obsessed with learning as much as I could about them. So I put together this little fact sheet so I could share and talk about it this weekend. And it just so happens working out that I get to talk to you two about it. So
We're the lucky ones.
you are the very lucky ones, yeah. So first of all, beavers as ecosystem engineers is not something I guess I knew that, but maybe the framing and the listening to it is what kind of like made me realize just how much beavers can affect local ecosystems. And so I learned a lot about their dams, and so they'll build these dams to then I found out that especially during the winter they want these dams to create as big of ponds as possible, because then it maximizes the amount of space they have underneath the ice during the winter to forage and look for food under there, and it's a little bit more livable space for them to hunt around for their food. And for some reason I also perceived them as carnivores. I thought they maybe ate fish, but it turns out that they are herbivores. So they just eat mostly plants and like algae and stuff, which I wasn't expecting. But they do a really good job of like flooding an area and like transforming it, which makes them, I guess, a keystone species, and that they are important for how much they can change an ecosystem in a local area. And I guess I've really seen this at home too, where we have these beavers that are right across from our apartment, and they have built 3 dams in about a 3-block spacing. And so you've got like these 3 different sections of the creek that's been plugged up, and I'm surprised the city hasn't removed them yet, but they have completely transformed the creek from anything I've ever seen it before. It's now this more marshy area, and the water is very still instead of flowing like it normally would. And they've trapped all these like big fish that normally you would never see in the creek, but they've trapped them in this little area. And funny story actually about Faith. She was walking our dog Sissy along the path once, and the biggest one in there just came up, flopped down, and it sounded like you threw a rock into the creek. And she was scared. She came running back, and it took us a couple times of hearing it before I finally saw the fish coming out of the water. But these fish are now like stuck there, and it's all very marshy, and it's just totally transformed the ecosystem all around this creek. So it was just very interesting. Now that I'm realizing just how much beavers really affect the ecosystem. Now, you guys were saying there's some beavers out here, right?
Right, just north here, about a quarter of a mile, there's a creek.
Mm-hmm.
And our friends have property on the creek, and they have goats and horses on this small plot right on the creek, trees and things. And I can't remember if they had the county trap it, but they were building some dams and backing up water where they didn't want it, with their little farm going on there. But I want to see your marshes up there.
I'll take some pictures and we'll send
Okay,
them over.
good.
Yeah.
You have to show Nicole.
Oh yeah, she's coming up with us tomorrow.
Yes.
Because we're leaving here to go check out the wedding venue, because we're exactly 364 days away from the wedding. It's crunch time.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go check out the venue, because the next time it'll be available is like July, and we want to see it as close to what it would look like on the actual day of the wedding. We'll take a walk with Sissy and show Nicole what it looks like.
Yeah, good. If you take some pictures, that would be
We'll
cool.
definitely take some pictures, and I'll post them on here too so people can see it, but I'll send them directly to you guys.
Okay. Because if the city does take the dams out, that will change a lot of things.
I guess the Beavers came in a couple of years ago, and they removed them too. But it sounds like maybe they're letting them stay for now, right? Because they've been there for a while, and there's a really, really big one. It must be like the patriarch, because it is very round, and he's not very afraid. He came up on land right where we usually take Sissy to go potty, and Sissy and him just kind of stared at each other, and I was like, oh God, please no. I'm gonna let her like kind of like, sniff it out, but I'm not gonna let her get any closer. And they just like checked each other out, and from a distance, and then eventually he was like, nah, and he jumped in the lake and just kind of, or in the stream, and just kind of did a bunch of circles and stuff. And Sissy was like, she was really unsure about it, so she was like, not about it. Sissy's kind
Good
of
for her.
Yeah, she's a little bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to anything really, especially like new people. If someone new, very timid until they pet her, and then she's like, oh, you're a friend. I love this. Some beautiful times.
I'm going to vacate for 5 minutes. I have to turn that water off because it might catch us over here.
Alrighty, I got you muted. Okay.
With the wind blowing.
So like Lionel was saying earlier about dams filtering stuff, turns out they really help regulate water flow, and turns out the dams are also really helpful in preventing flooding. And their dams, just the way they're built, naturally manage to keep like a lot of pollutants out of flowing down the stream, and so it'll collect up. I'm not really sure what happens to the beavers then if all the pollutant stuff just gets smashed up against their dam, though.
It would slow the flow of water for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But if it just maybe puts pressure on the dam that they make. Huh. Well, you can go out and collect all the garbage that the dams collect.
I'm worried because my naive perception is that beavers are might be a little aggressive about going anywhere near their dams.
I would think so.
Yeah, but again, they're not. My understanding is they're not particularly they don't really fight. Especially when it comes to territories. I guess when two different beaver families come up on each other's territories, they won't fight. They do this thing called stick display. And so they will each, like the biggest one will pick up a stick and show the other beavers, look how strong I am. I can pick up this really big stick. You don't want to mess with me. And I guess that's their form of territory defense. Now, I will concede that this is apparently... I read a research article particularly on this, and they're like, it's really hard to get a lot of data on this because beavers are typically active at night. And so it's hard to get a lot of data on their behaviors. Sometimes they're active early morning and late at night too, when there's still a little bit of sunlight. But the research that I specifically read is saying that of the family that was doing the most stick display, 50% of all observed stick displays was by one female beaver. And so they're not entirely sure what was really happening here, other than, like I said, maybe that territory defense stuff.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah, there's some other evidence of beavers using tools, actually. Now, I guess the definition of tool use varies, and some people dispute how exactly to define it. But there was a study where they were put into a room with a pool, and there was a pencil-sized hole, drain at the bottom. And they were able to sense where that drain was, and they cut a stick to the exact size and then plugged that pencil-sized hole with a stick they had cut. And I was like, interesting. That's really, instead of just trying to shove rocks or something, or
we would do.
Yeah, they just cut a plug exactly what they needed. And I was, man, beavers must be really, really smart.
They don't have that brain. I mean, when you think of a beaver, it's got a very flat, small head. But yet, some of that's very interesting. Animal behaviors.
Yeah, there's another. I guess I'm not sure if it was a study done or it's mostly based on an anecdote, but I guess they observed that a tree had been cut down by beavers, but it was recent. It was a recent cut down by a beaver, but it was too high for a beaver to have actually cut it. And so the theory is that they actually used another piece of wood as a plank to climb up to where they wanted to cut the tree down, and they cut it down at that point. Again, more potential evidence of stick use. I'm like, what an odd behavior too for a wild animal to exhibit. Why they would want to cut a tree higher up rather than just at the base where they're at.
That's a good question.
Civil engineering, you have to know which direction to make it fall. It's where you can use it, so it's not just a random thing where you're going to gnaw away at the base and have it come down, but you want it to fall in a direction that's going to be advantageous to you, and they're not ignorant. They're not intelligent like we are, but every animal has certain instincts that they use.
Yeah, I guess I've been learning a lot about different animals that are very intelligent. Because I previously on this podcast also talked about how we've potentially identified a sperm whale phonetic alphabet, and they have these things called codas that are between 3 and 40 clicks with different rhythms and ornamentation at the end of it. And so these scientists have been spending years trying to identify this phonetic alphabet, and they're unsure if is this language, or is this something maybe they're singing a song and we're just interpreting it as language.
It's a communication. I think all animals have some type of communication. Even dogs or cats, they can talk to other animals in terms of how their tails or their fur or their ears, or lots of body positions, and also the way they bark.
Yeah. But these sperm whales are just very fascinating. They were using thousands of hours of recorded clicks to try and identify this, and it was, I guess, the biologists were having a really hard time understanding the data. They're we can't make sense of this. And then a computer scientist said, I think you guys are looking at this wrong. You guys are trying to look at it a certain way, and I think we should look at it in this new model. And so she used the computer to kind of pick up some of the sounds that the human biologist couldn't figure out. And then she's like, look at this. There are specific, codas. These are the phonetic alphabet they have. And so maybe I'm just on an animal kick lately, and I'm not realizing it.
That sounds kind of like what you were talking about, logarithms, or no.
Don't use math terms on me, Jerry.
Okay, the math terms. But people are they're calling it AI, but it's just a matter of
data mining, Jerry.
Data mining and the algorithms and some of that stuff that we have the technology now to hear more of that. We have and then we can hook it in. I find it fascinating. Not something I want to get into, but
they're speaking of AI. They're now that they have this research base that they have, they're like, let's expand this, and so they're going to be using drones and some other equipment to get thousands of hours of recordings to hopefully get millions of examples. And they're training a unique AI to be able to interpret that and try to give a little bit more information about what exactly the sperm whales are actually trying to communicate, or what maybe they're doing to identify their language a little bit more broadly.
So when you say unique AI, you just mean computer?
Yeah, well, it's an AI specifically trained for this, rather than kind of a general AI that might be used for other things too.
But when you say AI, tell me what you mean.
Yeah, just a lot of computer algorithms put together to make just one very intelligent chatbot. Yeah, that's what AI is today, and it's not a true artificial intelligence.
Not even close.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it can process information much faster than we can.
Yeah,
But back
that's one
to
of
what
my
you're
pet
talking
peeves.
about, the whales, you have to integrate the clicking with the activity. Is there some relationship between what the whales are saying or clicking on and what their activity has? So otherwise, the language is just a matter of making noise.
Yeah, and that's kind of goes along with one of the problems. They don't know if they are communicating to the sperm whale right next to them, or the sperm whale miles away because of how far their sound can travel underwater. They have no idea who they're communicating with, so it's hard to kind of tell if it's like being directed at certain behavior and stuff.
It could be well, just like bees. They'll come back and tell other bees in the hive where the pollen is. So there's got to be some kind of relationship between the sound and the activity to make it useful.
And not knowing who they're communicating directly with makes it so much harder.
Hard to see, hard to do. Good coffee, right?
Yeah, it is good coffee, yeah. But to bring it back to the dams, I had a couple more little factoids that I wanted to share.
The beavers again, huh?
Oh, yeah, I love these beavers. It turns out that dam building is something that's instinctual rather than learned behavior. Because they took some baby beavers who were taken away before they could have learned how to build a dam from the family, and they instinctively knew how to build a dam, and they used I guess there is this way for beavers to determine exactly where the best place to build a dam is, because it's not just any kind of running water that triggers dam building, because otherwise we'd see beavers attempting to build a dam across Niagara Falls, but they try to pick up on the speed and depth of a body of water. They look for flow and certain channel characteristics before deciding where a suitable spot is. But one little fun fact is I found out that the largest beaver dam ever discovered is in Alberta, Canada, and it is half a mile wide. And they started building it in the 70s, and it is still a continuously habitated dam. It's a big dam.
Big dam.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the habitat? What is the area for beavers? Is it across the world or in different forms?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a difference between Eurasian beavers and North American beavers.
Or even if they exist there.
Yeah. No, there are Eurasian beavers.
Okay.
I just I would be really interested to learn more if there's a difference in the dam requirements for a beaver depending on its subspecies. So, great. Now I've got a reason to keep on digging. Thanks, Jerry. And the last weird thing I wanted to bring up. Have you guys ever heard of castoreum? The beaver's castoreum?
Not I.
I'm not.
So it is a musky secretion that the beavers produce in these glands next to their anus, down by their tails, and it serves a couple different purposes. One is communication, and the other is some more practical purposes. So they can mix this castoreum with urine to mark territory, but then they can also rub it on themselves to waterproof their fur. And this stuff, humans have been trying to hunt down beavers for their castoreum for 6,000 years, because it's believed that it can also be used for tool hardening, medicine, and even mosquito repellent, which is all really interesting. But today, some of those uses it's actually approved by the FDA as a flavoring agent, but it's rarely used because it's really expensive. And then there is a Swedish spirit called, I think, Baverhot, and it's called, in English, Beaver Stout. But they use it as flavoring in there. And then it's also used in some perfumes. But
the oil would, yeah.
Yeah,
makes sense.
There's a lot of medieval paintings people hunting down beavers. And the way you can always tell that they're hunting a beaver, because medieval depictions of animals are crazy. There are all sorts of misconceptions in medieval paintings. But the way you can always tell it's a beaver is because you'll see the beaver trying to, in the painting, chew off its own testicles. I guess medieval people believed that a beaver would chew off its own testicles to try and get away from a hunter. It's a weird myth, but it's medieval times. They had some pretty crazy conceptions of animals not native to Western Europe. But there's, like I said, there's plenty of artwork of people with dogs chasing down beavers for this Castorian stuff. I guess it was liquid gold for them.
I read a book once.
Mm-hmm. I read a book once too.
I've read one or two.
But there was about making perfume. The name of the book was Perfume. I don't remember the author. In Europe, and they used all kinds of things like that to make perfume.
It's the oil they're looking
at. The rarest kinds of things that you wouldn't even think of to use to make perfume. So that one doesn't surprise me. But I wonder if they collect that when they trap beavers, like here. If you call the county, they'll come trap a beaver for you and get it out of your stream.
Sure.
They might be money there.
Might be good money. Yeah, and so I guess I don't know. I wonder how much beaver hunting still happens today, because they used to be hunted pretty good for their furs and stuff. But
I think they're still trapped.
I'm sure they still are.
They're trapping license in Idaho, so they're still trapped.
There was a kid. Can I tell a school story?
Absolutely.
A kid in my first year of teaching here, and I taught a speech class, but he told us in a demonstration about, he brought his, this is an 8th grader, brought his traps and told how he went on the river and the creeks and trapped beavers as an 8th grader.
When
of course,
was this?
This would have been in 82.
Okay.
Very interesting. Yeah. But now that, we've all this, I guess the anti-furs and pelts and things, I don't know what they do with them now.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is just like the fur trade is so almost non-existent that I wonder if it's anything other than rare, very rare to be hunting down beavers or trapping them. But obviously, if a license exists, there are some people out there still doing it.
Beavers, muskrat, coyote, fox, they'll skin them all.
Yeah.
Do you have to have a license to trap?
Yes.
Is that? I assume it's like by trap kind of a license thing, or is it?
I don't. Well, if you're going to set a trap line, you have to have the permission, and they have to know where it's at. Okay. Just for safety's sake.
Sure, that makes sense.
But they're still used. But that you talked about the fur industry and so forth. They found synthetic materials that are, the quality is probably the same, not quite the same kind of thing, but the quality of what you're trying to performance-wise, I guess I'm saying. And so it's much cheaper. So that's probably one of the reasons the fur industry is not as popular as it was 200 years ago. The synthetic fibers now are just as strong, if not more durable and cheaper.
Well, either of you ever had a close encounter with a beaver before?
I don't know that I've ever seen a beaver.
Oh, well, Jerry, you need to go backpacking with us sometime.
Go to I bet the Boise Zoo has one. But.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. Maybe, I'm sorry, I don't count that.
Oh,
a zoo.
That's fair. I wouldn't count that either.
Yeah. In the wild, I don't know that I've seen one.
I've seen them.
Yeah, I've only seen them in the stream across from my apartment.
Okay, we'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this Saturday Morning Coffee episode. The show usually lasts until I run out of coffee or topics, and I think we ran out of both at the same exact time. I don't know about you guys. But
Mine's cold.
I have to bottle beer sometime this week, so.
Well, thank you both for joining me for Saturday Morning Coffee Week. I hope everyone listening doesn't mind the audio texture too much, or the wind kind of blowing through here a little bit. But thank you for joining us on Alcove.